Good morning and welcome to The Point. This morning we continue looking at Decision 2016 and some local House races that are important to you and your neighbors, including one in the 86th District. There, Democrat Lynn Mason is waiting to find out which of 5 Republicans will replace Lisa Postumus-Lyons to be the standard bearer for the GOP. This morning, you'll meet all 5. Tell me about your background. What have you done up to now that brings you to this point?
I went to the University of Michigan after I graduated from Belding High School. I had degrees in history and political science. From there, I had a lot of opportunities where I could go, and I decided to join the United States Marine Corps. So between my junior and senior year, I actually went to officer candidate school. And the day I graduated from University of Michigan, I became an officer in the United States Marine Corps. I did about a year of required training, and then I entered the Fleet Marine Force as a logistics officer. I spent 2009 as an advisor to the Iraqi Army. It was a pretty unique experience. Essentially what we did is we took about a team of 15 people and of all different military occupational specialties. So I was logistics, there was infantry, artillery, intelligence, you name it. And if you put a pinprick in the middle of the Anbar province, that's where we were. We were stationed with an Iraqi brigade, and we worked with them and trying to increase their capabilities. So it was a pretty unique experience, and it gave me a lot of leadership skills I think will be very, very helpful in state government. So I came back. It was 2010. I quickly learned how horrible the job market was. The GI Bill looked pretty appealing, so I decided to go to Michigan State, and I got an MBA with a concentration in finance. It was a great learning experience, and it gave me all the tools and business I needed to be successful. I used that degree to get a job at the State Pension Fund, where I've been working for the last 3 years as an investor. I invest in different real assets, oil and gas, real estate, life sciences, very broad portfolio, so it's been a great experience.
What makes you decide, after the rich background of education and experience, to run for the State House of Representatives into what some would call a dysfunctional legislature?
Well, you look at the dysfunction, and I have young kids, and you want them to have the best upbringing possible. And there's 3 reasons why I decided to run for state rep. The first is leadership. I've led Marines, and I could be an effective leader in government as well. The second is courage. We need leaders who have the courage to make tough choices, and I can do that. You don't join the Marine Corps during wartime without having some guts. I'm not afraid to stand up for what's right for the 86th District. And lastly, I'm running for families. My transition from military to civilian employment was not the easiest transition in the world. But God does everything for a purpose, and the experiences I went through gave me perspective on just how hard it can be to raise a family. And we need representatives that understand that and go to Lansing and make decisions that benefit families, and that's what I'm going to do.
Let's just start with the very basics. What is your background? What have you done up to now? What is your profession, and what leads you to run for this office?
Well, my background as far as my profession, I'm a trained mediator as well as an attorney. I've been in the legal field for 15 years, and I've been trained as a mediator for 10 years. Specialty trained in pretty much every kind of mediation out there. So everything from divorce to neighbor disputes, landlord-tenant matters, agriculture and rural development, special education, child protection, adult guardianship. There's quite a few different specialties in that arena. There's a lot of other work that I do that is more, I guess, on my personal side of things. So,
with a background like that, one suspects you keep pretty busy, and at the same time you've decided to run for office, which, as you well know, is a big undertaking, and it's a crowded field that you're in this particular race. Why did you decide to get in?
Well, when I was at an event last August, my husband and I, we look up to Justin Amash. We value his conservative principles and the way he explains every vote, the way he's accountable, makes himself accessible to the voters. And he asked me to consider looking at this race, knowing that it was going to be an open seat, and at that point no one had expressed any interest in running as far as I knew. So my husband and I took it under consideration and really thought about it and prayed about it, and about a couple weeks later is when we decided that we would get in the race. So it was August of 2015 is when I entered, and there was no one else in the race at that time.
And that also points out the kind of commitment that people might not understand candidates have, because you've been in this almost a year, will be a year by the time the primary rolls around. So Obviously, there's a reason you want to do this. So what is it that you think the state needs or the district needs or that we need in general here in the state of Michigan?
Well, first of all, I want to do this because I have, well, my four biggest reasons are age 2 to 15. So I need to make sure I'm using my God-given talents so I'm ensuring a better future for them to enjoy in Michigan. I don't want them to have to move away because other states have better opportunities. As far as what Michigan has in terms of the issues that we need to solve, just with any government, we have issues that everybody is willing to sit around and complain about, and not too many people take that step of being a part of the solution. So there's not one key issue that drove me to becoming involved, but it's more of looking at the overall set of problems. And if I'm willing to tell my kids or teach them the value that don't be willing to sit around and complain about something if you're not willing to step up and be a part of the solution, I figure it's about time that I step up and try to be a part of the solution.
Tell me about your background. What brings you to this point? What have you done up to now?
I was born in Grand Rapids, grew up in West Michigan, went to high school in Sturgis, Michigan, which is down along the border with Indiana, and right away went to college at the University of Michigan and got my engineering degree. And I was blessed to go to work for a company called Intel Corporation right out of school, very successful high-tech company. During that time period, I was also very politically involved, always with the Republican Party, serving as a precinct delegate and serving as a leader in College Republicans and the State College Republican Federation. Always had an interest in politics, but it was more of a hobby or something I did on the side. I ended up going to law school when I was with Intel and have been in an intellectual property law practice ever since that time. And one of the reasons I went into the law field is because I thought that would allow me to have more of an impact on some of the issues that I'm passionate about. For example, the Constitution, religious liberty, and economic freedom. And the reason I'm running right now is because, frankly, I am fed up with the way things have been going business as usual. I'm tired of people running for a political office and saying they're going to do one thing when they get into office, and then they get there, and it seems like the only thing they care about is getting reelected. I believe that the government that we have, both at the state and federal level, is too big. It's unaccountable. I think people are tired of having so much of their money taken from taxes, and nothing really seems to change. So I feel like with my private sector experience, my education, my legal background, that I can go to Lansing and bring some tools and bring some changes that can get the government accountable and kind of keep it in its box.
You said you're tired of people going to Lansing, saying that they're going to do something and then doing something else. It's impossible to know, of course, but is that, from your perspective, a question of people being less than candid? Or is it the reality of the governance piece of serving, which means that you don't always get everything you want and you have to compromise?
Right. I think it's a combination, and I think it depends on the person. I do think that there are some people who all they've ever wanted to do is run for office, and they kind of triangulate and say, what do I need to do to get this? In other words, the office itself is a goal, and then continuing to progress up into politics. So I think that's a motive for some people, and the voters have to determine, I guess, the best they can if that's a motive. I think the other piece of that, though, is people that go to Lansing and maybe are naive about how things work and lack experience. You can have really good ideals, but if you haven't had those ideas and ideals tried and tested in the marketplace and in previous experience, I think it's real easy once you get to Lansing or once you get to DC, and we've seen this with some Supreme Court judges, for example, in the United States, they get there and they kind of get sucked into the whole culture.
Tell me about your background. What's your personal life?
Well, I'm a fourth generation Ionian. I'm raising the fifth generation of Lauers in the city of Ionia right now. I graduated from Ionia High School in 1995, went on to Eastern Michigan University, played on a golf scholarship there, graduated in 1999 with a business degree. Since then, I've had a career in sales and marketing. And over the past 15 years, with the economy the way that it's been, I've had to reinvent myself quite a few different times. So I've worked in multiple industries, worked in manufacturing, school supplies, banking, IT, even entertainment. So I've got a pretty unique background.
What makes you decide, with all that varied background, to run for this office? Obviously, there are term limits that create openings, but you still have to decide why it is you want to run. Why now?
Well, I mentioned having to reinvent myself a few different times. Since the economic downturn, My wife and I have been downsized 5 different times combined. Her and I are both college-educated people, and we're hard workers. And like thousands and thousands of other Michiganders, we've had to face those challenges. And I can't imagine my children facing that same kind of future. So Nikki and I talked about it and said, with the background that I have, I think I can help. So now's the time to step up and see what we can do.
So what does need to be done? Because as one of 110, it is not always easy to get all of the minnows herded in the same direction, as it has been referred to. But if you had that power, and if you are successful, what is it you think you can do that helps to preclude the somewhat cyclical economy of a state like Michigan?
Well, interestingly, there was a time where Michigan was ranked just about dead last in being a state that is friendly for job creators. We are now 13th, and I like to say that I can sell that. And what I mean by that is, this district, the 86th district, is very unique in that the things that are happening in East Kent County are drastically different than what's going on in Ionia County. I look at the position as a state representative, and now that the state is set up for success for job creators, part of my job being to literally pick up the phone and recruit businesses to come to Michigan and come to West Michigan. Ionia and parts of Ionia County need some good jobs drastically. And, like I said, a big part of what I'll be doing in Lansing is to literally recruit businesses to come to the area.
Tell me about your background, about your history. What have you done that brings you to this point?
Well, Rick, I am a farmer. I am a lifelong farmer. My family has a farm in Virgins Township. We have been there since the founding of the state in 1837, so I am the 6th generation to farm this land. In addition to farming, I am an accountant. I have a degree in accounting from Aquinas College, and have worked for the last 15 years in various capacities in the accounting industry.
With that background, what brings you to run for the State House of Representatives? It sounds like you have a pretty full plate to start with.
It is a very full plate. In fact, I've had a very long spring to begin with. With that background, I feel that I meet the needs of the district. It is a diverse district running from the suburbs of Grand Rapids of Ada and Cascade Township through eastern Kent County into Ionia County, which is primarily a rural population consisting mostly of farmers and farmland.
Why did you want to run?
Well, this has been on my mind for a number of years to make a run at politics. I believe that as a farmer that we need that kind of representation in our state government. And as well, I believe in some of the social factors facing our state and our nation. Most notably, the right to life.
But what are some of the specifics that you would like to tackle if you're successful?
Well, if I am successful, one thing that I would really like to target is the government grants that are doled out to businesses. I believe it is an unconstitutional use of our taxpayer funds to give grants to one business over another. If a business cannot justify a transaction or a venture, then why should the taxpayers foot the bill?
Would that extend to all businesses, farms included?
Farms included.
What is the net result of that then? Because if these businesses, if I hear what you're saying that if they can't go through a conventional lending institution to get the money for whatever the project is, and the state gives them the money, does that mean some of these businesses simply wouldn't be able to exist?
I would say not that they can't exist. The issue is we are creating more of a market than there is a need for. For example, we could go out and I, as a farmer, could go out and say, I need a bigger combine, but that would create more capacity than I really need. And thus I'm asking the taxpayers to foot the bill for that excess capacity. In the end, as another example, if you were to create apartment buildings, you'd create excess capacity of apartments.
Up next, a Democratic primary, this time in Muskegon, when we come back to the point. Welcome back to The Point. In the 92nd District in Muskegon, there are two Republicans facing off in the primary. We were unable to arrange interviews with either one of them, but the two Democrats did want to talk, and this morning you'll meet them. Talk to me a little bit about your background. What have you done up to now that brings you to this point?
Well, I'm currently serving on our Muskegon Community College Board of Trustees. I've been there for 6 years. In addition to that, I've worked locally in Muskegon on downtown redevelopment in years past. I've served as a member of the Board of Directors for Alliance for the Great Lakes environmental organization. And I think I've been very successful in all those roles and looking for an opportunity to do more as state representative.
Term limits create opportunities every 6 years in these districts, or generally every 6 years, for people to run for office. So that's obviously part of the motivation. But beyond that, what made you decide to run?
Well, in my most recent role on the Community College Board, we've been very successful, I feel, in redeveloping our downtown, bringing new resources, including $17 million we were able to negotiate from the state and federal government to fund our new science and technology centers. And the college's finances, as board treasurer, I can tell you, are rock solid, and we don't see that at other levels of government right now. And I want to take the opportunity to try to bring that results-oriented approach and success to the state government, where I see a lot more division and things not happening as well.
You point out division, and that's a very fair point, because there are a lot of divisions. There's a lot of partisan rancor, and I should add quickly that there are a lot of things that are done in a bipartisan manner in Lansing. However, there are fundamental differences between Democrats and Republicans.
Yes.
Every 2 years, I sit in this room with a number of candidates who say, I want to go to Lansing and work across the aisle. And every 2 years, those people get elected, and there's still a lot of partisan rancor. So how do you do that? How do you bring people together?
Well, you do have to stand up for what you believe in. You do have to stand up for your core values, and I've done that, and I will continue to do that. But you also need to reach across the aisle, like you said. And I think the position I've been in has been an elected, nonpartisan position. And yeah, sure, we still have people who are liberal or who are more conservative there, but we've done a good job of leaving those labels at the door and focusing on the task at hand. And that's what I don't see happening in Lansing, particularly when we were able to go to Lansing, and I personally negotiated with some of the legislators to get some of that $17 million that we brought into Muskegon. It's a Republican-dominated legislature, so that's who I had to negotiate with, and we were able to do it.
When you think of government as a whole, talking about Lansing, think about Washington, and you think about some of the backlash may be too strong of a word, but we've certainly seen a lot of dissatisfaction with government as exhibited by outsiders gaining lots of traction in both the Republican and Democratic primaries. When you're out knocking on doors and talking to people, do you see a reflection of that in the microcosm in your area? Are people unhappy with government?
The country, and particularly my community right now, is very much in a mood for change, for an outsider to come in and not necessarily represent the status quo and all the powers that be, but someone who can really bring a voice of reform. And I look at our government right now and I see a whole lot of opportunity for reform, everything from redistricting reform, campaign finance reform, increases in transparency, where we're ranked dead last right now amongst the 50 states in transparency and accountability, opening up some of the more executive and legislative offices for FOIA requests, for example. To me, that's a common sense reform, and that's just the beginning of the list.
Interesting that you included into that redistricting, because the redistricting, quickly for people who don't know, is done by the majority party essentially every 10 years.
Yes.
And so it's usually done in the year after the census is taken. And a number of people have come up with different ways that they think would be a better way to redistrict: an independent commission, a geographic scale, all of these different kind of things. What's your thought? What is a better way to do it than how it's done?
My thought is you have to have some sort of independent body handle this with rules in place so that it ends up being fair, because right now you've got the politicians who are going to be standing for re-election drawing their own election maps. To me, that's a massive conflict of interest. Some other states, Arizona is one I can think of off the top of my head, have established an independent commission to remove that conflict of interest so that you get fairer lines and more competitive elections.
Finally, when you're going door to door and talking to people, you have to close the deal. You have to tell them why they should vote for you. In the closing seconds of our interview, what would you tell them if you're talking to somebody at the door when it's time to get that vote?
I have the most solid record. I'm the one who's brought millions of dollars into our community for new investment, educational opportunities for students. I've worked on downtown redevelopment and have a strong track record being involved in environmental protection and advocacy in the roles I've held in the past, and I think that makes me the clear choice.
Tell me about your background. What have you done up to now that leads you to this point?
Well, I've been employed by the City of Muskegon Heights Police and Fire Departments for 25 years. I started there real shortly after I left the military, and I was a former Muskegon County Road Commissioner and also currently Chairman of the Muskegon County Board of Commissioners.
So that gives you the entrance into politics to some degree. Now you've decided to run for the State House. What made that decision for you?
Well, it was not an easy decision, first of all. It was very difficult, but after hearing from especially many of the local elected leaders, Democrats in Muskegon County, that wanted me to run for the position, that's when I decided to do so. I think that they saw that the experience that I had was going to be a big asset going into Lansing. Really knowing how government works, good and bad. So I think that's probably one of the biggest things. But really, maybe more importantly, is I saw the need to move Muskegon in a little bit of a different direction. I've often said it's time for Muskegon to get out of the back seat and get into the driver's seat and start driving things around here in West Michigan and in this region. So I've been very involved with a lot of different things in Muskegon County, and I hope to take that to Lansing and continue on with that movement.
It was not long ago that I got a rash of emails that were generated by some promoters of the Muskegon area for making a reference to the relative economic condition there. It's a mistake I don't want to make again, so let me ask it in this way.
Sure.
When you look at Muskegon, when you look at some of the real assets it has, some of the best beaches around and some really beautiful areas up there, the economic development has not been the same there as it has in some other areas with similar attributes. So that's what you're talking about, I assume, moving Muskegon in a direction that helps create jobs and wealth and all of the things that we hope for our communities. How do you do that?
Well, absolutely. I think we've got a lot of good things to offer, as you indicated, and I think that we're slowly turning the corner and changing the culture of Muskegon, changing the attitude of Muskegon and what people are seeing. I think we just continue on with our effort. We've done a lot of work with the Port of Muskegon in trying to renew efforts there to reestablish the port as a major shipping point on the Great Lakes. We've done a lot of good things with that moving forward, but it's not going to end there. I mean, we've got to continue up with our efforts to try to make Muskegon a more attractive place to do business and a more attractive place for our visitors to come to.
When you talk about that port, it's one of a handful in the state that actually has the ability to take some of the ships that you can and do some of those kind of things. You recently had a cruise ship that stopped in Muskegon that used to go, I think, to Holland, and this year it stopped in Muskegon. What can you do as a state representative to foster those kind of things? Because that sounds like a very localized kind of plan.
Well, it is. In a sense, it's localized, but really I believe that this is going to be a regional effort. This is not a Muskegon effort to revitalize the Port of Muskegon. Muskegon's port is the only natural deep water port on the whole entire west side of Michigan, and I think it's time that we utilize that more to its capabilities. And with the closure of the BC Cod plant, we're working hard to increase the tonnage that's coming into the port, but also with the cruise ships coming in. To me, that's just a small piece to the puzzle in bringing people in and showing them what Muskegon has to offer, the good things, and we've gotten a great response to that so far. And one of the things that I intend to continue working on is to make it easier for our businesses to do business on the port, in and around Muskegon, because I just think that that's going to be very vital as we move forward. So.
When you talk about running for office, particularly running for a House district, it's a big undertaking. I think, my word's not yours, that this year is a particularly big undertaking because there is something afoot that makes people distrustful of government. We've seen it represented in selecting outsiders to some degree, both in the Democratic and Republican presidential primaries. Obviously, Bernie Sanders wasn't successful, but he had a heck of a run. What are you hearing? Is that transferring at all to a House race, or are people concerned about government? When you
Oh,
talk to them?
no doubt about it. I think in the thousands of doors that my team has knocked down, including myself, that's one of the most common things that we hear are people that are really upset with the way government works, some of the promises in the past that have been broken, the fighting that goes on, and that's one thing that it frustrates me as well. And I intend to really take a common sense approach to government, again, knowing the good and bad of government and how it works. As an employee for the City of Muskegon Heights for 25 years, and then also on the administrative side for the County of Muskegon. I really think that puts me in a good position to go to Lansing and hopefully try to change the way business is done there, a change for the better.
For more information on the 92nd District or any of the House races, just go to the Michigan Secretary of State's website and click on the listing for the August primary. We're back with more To the Point. Next week, another look at more campaigns and more candidates just 1 week before we head off to the national conventions. I hope you'll join us then and every Sunday morning at 10 o'clock on Wood TV 8 for To the Point.